Most of us wake up every day with a quiet question in our minds. What if it doesn't work out? What if I fail? What if I look foolish? What if I lose? And because of that fear, we play smaller, we hold back, we hesitate. But here's the truth. Life tends to follow the story we tell ourselves. When we act as if everything will go wrong, we often find exactly that. But when we act as if everything always works out for us, something incredible happens. We start to see opportunities instead of obstacles, solutions instead of setbacks, hope instead of doubt. This is not about blind optimism or pretending challenges don't exist. It's about building a mindset, a lens through which we see the world differently. It's about choosing trust over fear, possibility over paralysis, and courage over comfort. Today, I want to show you why adopting this mindset doesn't just change how you feel it. It changes what you do, how others respond to you, and ultimately, the results you create in your life. Most people don't realize how much power their mindset holds over their daily lives. We think success is purely about hard work, strategy, and resources. And while all of those things matter, they are never enough without the right perspective. The way we see the world determines the way we act in it. The way we act in it influences the outcomes we get. It becomes a cycle, one that can either hold us back or propel us forward. When I say mindset shapes reality, I don't mean that simply wishing for something will magically make it appear. I mean that the beliefs you carry into a situation change how you approach it, how you persevere through it, and how you respond when things don't go as planned. That is where reality shifts, because your actions shift first. Imagine two people with the same skills, the same opportunities, and the same challenge in front of them. One believes deep down that things rarely work out for them. The other believes that somehow, in the end, everything falls into place. Which one is more likely to keep trying when the first attempt fails? Which one is more likely to notice possibilities instead of problems? Which one will have the resilience to adapt when things change unexpectedly? It's not that life is easier for one than the other. It's that their mindset unlocks different actions, and those actions open different doors. Think about how our brains are wired. We filter everything we see through a lens of expectation. If we expect failure, we start spotting every reason why it might happen. We become hesitant, doubtful, and cautious to the point of inaction. And in that hesitation, opportunities slip away. On the other hand, if we expect things to work out, we naturally take bolder steps. We're quicker to say yes, quicker to start, quicker to learn from mistakes instead of being paralyzed by them. That mindset doesn't guarantee success, but it dramatically increases the chances of reaching it. The truth is, the world often reflects back to us the energy we bring into it. When you walk into a room believing things won't work, people can sense your insecurity. They hesitate to trust you, to collaborate, to invest in your ideas. When you walk into a room acting as if everything will work out, your confidence inspires confidence in others. That's how leaders gain followers, how entrepreneurs attract support, and how ordinary people create extraordinary opportunities. It's also important to understand that mindset doesn't erase difficulties. Acting as if everything always works out doesn't mean pretending challenges don't exist. It means carrying the unshakable belief that challenges are just part of the path, not the end of it. When something goes wrong, instead of saying, "This is proof it won't work," you say, "This is part of how it's going to work." That subtle shift in interpretation is often the difference between giving up and pushing through. History is full of people who embodied this principle. Innovators, leaders, and creators who were told their ideas were impossible, unrealistic, or foolish, but who carried the belief that things would work out anyway. They kept going not because they knew exactly how everything would unfold, but because they trusted that if they stayed in motion, if they kept acting as if the outcome was certain, reality would eventually catch up to their belief. That's how movements are built, businesses are grown, and lives are transformed. Mindset shapes reality because it shapes what we are willing to attempt, how long we are willing to endure, and how creatively we are willing to respond. Every breakthrough begins with someone who acted as if it was possible long before anyone else could see it. That is the power of choosing a mindset that works for you instead of against you. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. It has kept our species alive for thousands of years, warning us of danger, urging us to avoid risk, and protecting us from harm. But in the modern world, where most of our challenges are not about survival, but about growth, fear often becomes more of a cage than a shield. Fear limits, it narrows our vision, shrinks our choices, and convinces us to stay still when movement is exactly what we need. The problem is not that fear exists, because fear will always be there. The problem is when fear becomes the decision maker instead of a signal we learn to move through. Think about how often fear keeps us from even trying. The fear of being judged, the fear of failing, the fear of not being good enough. It convinces us that playing small is safer than reaching higher. But the irony is, in choosing not to risk, we create the very outcome we are afraid of. We fear rejection, so we don't ask. We fear failure, so we don't start. We fear disappointment, so we don't dream. And then we wonder why our lives feel smaller than they could be. Fear doesn't just limit what we do, it limits who we become. Trust, on the other hand, expands. When we trust ourselves, we give permission to act even when the outcome is uncertain. Trust says, "I may not know how this ends, but I believe I can handle it." That belief opens up space for courage, creativity, and resilience. Trust doesn't remove risk, it reframes it. Instead of seeing risk as something to avoid, we begin to see it as an opportunity to grow, to learn, to discover what we're capable of. Trust also changes our relationships. When we lead with fear, people can sense it. Fear closes us off, makes us guarded, defensive, and hesitant to connect. But when we lead with trust, we invite others in. Trust signals safety, openness, and possibility. People are drawn to those who trust themselves and who extend trust to others. That is why the most inspiring leaders are not the ones who have all the answers, but the ones who believe in the potential of the people around them. Their trust gives others permission to rise to the occasion. The real power lies in choosing where to place our attention. Fear focuses on what might go wrong. Trust focuses on what could go right. Fear sees obstacles as dead ends. Trust sees them as detours that still lead forward. Fear asks, "What if I fail?" Trust asks, "What if I succeed?" That shift in focus changes not only how we feel, but also the actions we're willing to take. And over time, those actions accumulate into entirely different outcomes. None of this means we should ignore fear. Fear is information, and sometimes it's useful. But when fear dictates every choice, it paralyzes us. The way forward is not to wait until fear disappears. It rarely does, but to move anyway, fueled by trust. The act of trusting ourselves in the presence of fear is what strengthens us. Each time we choose trust, our capacity expands a little more. Life is full of uncertainty, and no one can predict how things will unfold. But here's the truth. Fear will always imagine the worst, and trust will always imagine the best. Both are guesses about the future, but only one opens doors, only one moves us forward. Trust expands because it allows us to step into the unknown with courage instead of hesitation, and that courage creates possibilities that fear would never let us see. Optimism is often misunderstood. People hear the word and immediately think of naive positivity, pretending everything is fine when it's not, or ignoring problems that are staring us right in the face. But that's not optimism, that's denial. Real optimism is not about ignoring reality. It's about choosing to interpret reality in a way that empowers action. It's a deliberate strategy, a way of thinking that gives us the strength to keep moving forward even when the path is uncertain. Optimism is not the guarantee of a perfect outcome. It's the belief that no matter what happens, something valuable can come from it. When you treat optimism as a strategy, you stop waiting for circumstances to justify your hope. Instead, you bring hope into the circumstances. That shift is critical because life will always give us reasons to doubt, to worry, and to hold back. If we only allowed ourselves to feel hopeful when everything looked promising, we would rarely ever act. Optimism as a strategy means we choose to step forward, not because the future is certain, but because action itself creates possibilities. It becomes the fuel that gets us started, the strength that keeps us going, and the perspective that allows us to learn from setbacks rather than be destroyed by them. Consider two people facing the same obstacle. One sees it and thinks, "This is proof that I can't succeed." The other sees it and thinks, "This is part of the process of succeeding." The situation is the same, but the outcomes will be completely different. Why? Because the second person uses optimism as a strategy. They frame the challenge as a stepping stone instead of a wall, which means they keep moving. And in the act of moving, they discover solutions, opportunities, and allies that the first person never will. Optimism also influences the people around us. Teams don't follow leaders who constantly point out why things won't work. They follow leaders who acknowledge the challenges but still point toward possibility. Optimism is contagious because it gives others permission to hope. It turns a group of individuals into a community of believers. When people feel that their efforts matter, that the future is worth building, they give more of themselves. They take ownership, they take risks, and they become resilient together. That's how optimism as a strategy creates collective progress, not just individual success. It's also important to understand that optimism doesn't erase difficulty, it reframes it. Optimistic people still fail, still face rejection, still encounter setbacks. The difference is that they don't see those experiences as the end of the story. They see them as chapters within a larger story that is still unfolding. That mindset keeps them open, creative, and persistent. Where others see reasons to quit, they see reasons to adapt. Where others see doors closing, they see hallways leading to other doors. That is what makes optimism strategic. It creates momentum when circumstances alone would suggest stopping. There is also a scientific edge to optimism. Studies in psychology and neuroscience show that when people expect a positive outcome, they perform better. Their brains are more resourceful, their problem-solving abilities increase, and their physical resilience strengthens. In other words, optimism is not just an attitude, it's a performance enhancer. By expecting good outcomes, we literally prime our minds and bodies to create them. At its core, optimism as a strategy is about discipline. It's not about waiting for proof, it's about deciding where to place your focus. Do you focus on what's missing, or do you focus on what's possible? Do you dwell on why things won't work, or do you commit to finding how they can? That choice doesn't just shape how you feel in the moment, it shapes the future you end up building. Optimism as a strategy works because it keeps you in motion, and movement is where transformation happens. What we do speaks louder than what we intend. Behavior has a way of creating ripples that extend far beyond the moment, far beyond what we can predict. Every action, no matter how small, carries energy that builds into momentum. The challenge is that most people wait for momentum to appear before they act. They wait for the right mood, the right timing, or the right level of confidence. But the truth is, behavior doesn't follow momentum. Momentum follows behavior. The moment you take a step, no matter how uncertain or unpolished, you begin to shift the energy around you. Think about the times you've procrastinated on something important. The task grows heavier the longer you wait. You build stories in your mind about how difficult it will be, and the weight of inaction becomes its own burden. Then, the moment you finally start, even with a small action, the heaviness begins to dissolve. That's because behavior disrupts inertia. Once you are in motion, continuing feels easier than staying stuck. This is the essence of why behavior creates momentum. It transforms intention into movement, and movement naturally carries us forward. Confidence itself is not built in the mind, it is built in action. People often think they need confidence before they begin, but confidence is a result, not a prerequisite. By doing, we prove to ourselves that we can. By stepping forward, even when afraid, we teach ourselves resilience. And as those behaviors compound, momentum takes over. What once felt impossible begins to feel natural. What once required force becomes effortless. That is the invisible power of consistent behavior. It shifts your identity from someone who wants to someone who does. Momentum also has a magnetic effect. When people see someone taking bold steps, even without guarantees, they are drawn to it. Action inspires action. This is why leaders who lead by example are so effective. They don't just talk about possibilities, they embody them through their behavior. Their consistency, their courage, and their persistence send a signal that others can trust. And in responding to that signal, others begin to act too. Before long, momentum spreads beyond the individual and becomes a collective force. It's easy to underestimate how small actions accumulate. Writing a single page a day eventually produces a book. Making one phone call a day eventually creates a network. Exercising for 10 minutes a day eventually transforms your health. None of these outcomes happen overnight, but momentum has a compounding effect. What feels insignificant in the short term becomes powerful in the long term. The hardest part is often the first step, because that is where resistance is strongest. But once the pattern is established, behavior begins to carry itself forward. There is also a psychological shift that comes with momentum. When you are in motion, your brain interprets progress as proof. Each small win reinforces the belief that larger wins are possible. That belief fuels further action, creating a loop where behavior feeds momentum, and momentum feeds behavior. On the flip side, when you remain still, doubt grows. Inaction feeds fear, and fear feeds more inaction. The only way to break the cycle is to act. Momentum doesn't demand perfection, it demands consistency. The world doesn't reward those who think about what they might do. It rewards those who actually do. Behavior is the evidence of belief. By acting as if things will work out, you give momentum something to build on. It may start small, but small grows. Over time, the weight of consistent behavior becomes unstoppable force. That is why behavior is not just an expression of who you are in the present. It is the builder of who you will become in the future. Challenges have a way of shaking our confidence and making us question whether we are on the right path. They appear as obstacles, delays, rejections, and failures, and in the moment they feel like heavy blocks standing between us and the future we want. Most people see challenges as stop signs, evidence that they should turn back or give up. But the truth is, challenges are not stop signs. They are signals. They carry information, direction, and opportunities that cannot be seen at first glance. When we learn to interpret them as part of the journey rather than the end of it, everything changes. Every meaningful achievement in history has been shaped by challenges. Innovations were born because problems existed that demanded solutions. Leaders emerged not in times of comfort, but in times of difficulty where courage was required. Personal growth rarely happens when life is smooth. It happens when we are tested, stretched, and forced to discover strengths we didn't know we had. A challenge, then, is not proof that you are failing. It is proof that you are on a path worth walking. If there were no resistance, it would mean you are not pushing past your current limits. When you encounter a challenge, you have two choices. Treat it as the end of the road, or treat it as a signal to adjust. The signal might be telling you to develop a new skill, to refine your strategy, or to build resilience. It might be showing you that the path you're on requires more patience than you expected. Sometimes it's even a signal pointing you toward a better direction than the one you originally imagined. The challenge is not meant to discourage you, it's meant to guide you. The people who thrive are the ones who ask, "What is this challenge trying to teach me?" instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" It's natural to feel frustration when things don't go as planned, but frustration is also a signal, an indicator that you care deeply about the outcome. If you didn't care, you wouldn't feel the weight of the challenge at all. That passion can be fuel if you let it, reminding you that the difficulty is evidence of pursuit, of growth, of movement. Rather than seeing challenges as confirmation of weakness, you can choose to see them as confirmation that you are engaged in something meaningful. Another important truth about challenges is that they shape character. Anyone can appear confident when everything is easy. True resilience, true leadership, true belief in yourself is only revealed when things are not working out. Challenges strip away the illusion of control and invite you to build trust in yourself, in the process, and in the possibility that solutions will emerge. They demand creativity, persistence, and adaptability, all qualities that become part of your foundation for future success. Consider the metaphor of training. Muscles do not grow without resistance. They require weight, tension, and stress in order to become stronger. In the same way, our personal growth requires the resistance of life's challenges. Without them, we remain untested, unexpanded, and unprepared for the bigger opportunities ahead. The very pressure that feels like it might break you is often the exact pressure needed to prepare you. When you act as if everything will work out, challenges lose some of their power to paralyze you. They stop being final verdicts and start being temporary signals. You no longer see them as proof that the journey is over, but as guidance that the journey is still unfolding. This perspective doesn't eliminate difficulty, but it changes your relationship with it. Instead of retreating at the first sign of resistance, you move forward with curiosity, asking what new strength this moment is calling you to develop. The future is not a fixed destination waiting for us to arrive. It is something shaped in real time by the beliefs we hold and the actions those beliefs inspire. When we say the future bends to belief, we are acknowledging that the way we think about what is possible directly influences what becomes possible. Belief is the starting point of every breakthrough, every innovation, every transformation. Long before the results are visible, belief lays the foundation. It fuels persistence, it sustains courage, and it directs attention towards solutions that others cannot yet see. Think about the people who have changed the world. They didn't start with certainty, they started with belief. Wright brothers believed humans could fly when everyone else dismissed the idea as fantasy. Nelson Mandela believed in freedom and equality even after decades behind bars. Every entrepreneur, artist, or leader who accomplished something extraordinary first carried a belief that others thought was unrealistic. Their belief bent the future because it gave them the stamina to keep moving when logic or doubt might have said stop. Belief is not about ignoring reality, it is about seeing reality through a different lens. When you believe things will work out for you, you interpret setbacks differently. Failure stops being evidence that you can't and becomes evidence that you are still in motion. Doubt stops being a reason to quit and becomes a sign that you are doing something bold. That belief doesn't eliminate challenges, but it reframes them in a way that keeps you engaged. Over time, That engagement produces outcomes that would have been impossible without the belief that carried you through. Our brains are wired to look for evidence that confirms what we already believe. If you believe the future is stacked against you, you will unconsciously collect proof to support that view. You will notice rejections more than opportunities, failures more than progress, obstacles more than openings. On the other hand, if you believe the future bends in your favor, you will start noticing possibilities where others see problems. You will see connections, resources, and chances that others overlook. That attention shapes action, and those actions shape results. The cycle begins with belief, but it does not end there. It continues as belief fuels behavior, and behavior fuels momentum. Belief also has a powerful effect on the people around you. Leaders who carry strong belief inspire others to see beyond what is immediately visible. They give teams confidence, not by promising perfection, but by embodying conviction. Their belief becomes contagious, creating a collective mindset that bends the future even further. When enough people share a belief, it becomes a movement, and movements are powerful enough to reshape entire societies. On a personal level, belief creates identity. When you believe you are someone capable of handling whatever comes, you begin to act in alignment with that identity. You stop approaching life as a victim of circumstance and start approaching it as a creator of circumstance. That shift changes how you show up in conversations, in decisions, in opportunities. You stop hesitating at the edge of uncertainty because you trust that whatever happens, you will find a way through. The future bends not because it magically rearranges itself, but because you enter it with a posture of strength rather than fear. The most important part to remember is that belief is a choice. We often think it has to be earned, that we must wait until we have proof before we allow ourselves to believe. But the people who shape the future don't wait for evidence. They create it. They act as if the outcome is already leaning in their favor, and in doing so they tilt the odds. The future bends to belief because belief is the force that keeps us moving long enough, consistently enough, to eventually meet the version of the future we imagined.